evening. I am Ellen, your host for tonight's STEP study. We are delving into step 9, and I would like to introduce myself and our trusted servants that will be assisting our group tonight. Catherine and Abby. We will spend 3 to 5 minutes talking about this step from our personal experiences and then open up the room for discussion. Actually, it's a little bit different. I'm reading the other script. Okay, typically we'll wrap this around 9 to go over our next week's homework and close this out. Also, we've been doing, some of us will stay on later to answer any questions. We do not crosstalk in this meeting to keep strong boundaries and maintain the focus of our step work on ourselves. No matter how long you have been involved in a 12-step program, you are a valuable member with your own experiences, no matter what brought you into the room. The solution is the same, the 12-step recovery program of your choosing. Let me see. So what I'm going to share first is about step 9, making amends. So step 9 is make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Spiritual principles are forgiveness and courage. And the purpose of step 9 is to make the amends for me. It is to free me from my wrongdoings that hurt and pain I caused myself and others. Want to clean up, to repair the damage of the past and make it right with people that were involved. How did I cause hurt and pain to others? By living out my emotional, addicted, and dysfunctional behaviors, by manipulating, controlling, walking on eggshells, stealing from, cheating on, retaliating, etc. If the other person gets something positive from our amends, that's great, but not necessarily. And sometimes if we make amends to other people, they might not even have a clue what we're talking about, because I've seen that happen. Okay, so once I make amends and make it right, to the best of my ability, I am free. My conscience is free, and I am now free to forgive myself. There are 2 parts to the amend process. One is like when you're making that list with step 8, use the 3 columns, if that's what you're using, with the name of the person that you want to make, or place, or whatever. Anything that you had a resentment at, or whatever you made a wrongdoing. And you can put, you may make the amends or you may not. When I made my amends and I made that list, I had people, yes, definitely, as soon as possible. Like my daughter was the first one, and my dad was the second, and I drove to the cemetery to read him a letter. And yeah, that was freeing. And then I slowly went down the list, and I didn't do it all at once. You know, there was times in between, maybe a couple months, few months, when the time was right, when I felt right, you know, in the place to be able to make the amends. And so there are several ways to make amends directly, which is either by letter, phone, using email, text, in person, at the grave, etc. So the people that I really didn't want to face, or I couldn't face because they were at a distance or whatever, I wrote a letter, like my dad. I had somebody about 3 years ago that there was some problems between us. I sent that person an email instead of talking on the phone. And texting, I don't know, but they say you can do it. I've done letter and burned it. Like with my daughter, I drove down to Florida to see her, and met with her in person. So then indirectly, there's living amends, and living amends is different than making direct amends. It means living a completely new, now non-codependent, healthy, emotional, sober lifestyle. It means living in a way that you're making up for what harm you have done in the past. Living amends also means creating real changes through true and honest behaviors. So if I'm working on my behaviors and changing the way I react to people, I am doing a living amends. Living amends are exercises in humility, whereby we are watchful of our attitudes and actions. Healthy behavior will be our most powerful amends. It is a testament to our recovery, and that could be the greatest gift of step 9. Now, navigating step 9 can be exhausting emotionally. It's a difficult step to navigate for some, because I know if there was a person in my life that it was on my amends list and I did not want to make amends to this person because, first of all, I didn't feel safe and I was angry and I just couldn't see my part in, why I had to make amends to this person, and I struggled with that. And, eventually I did, but not in person. What is making amends? It is not an apology. An apology is saying, I'm sorry, but this is only a Band-Aid, and it covers up truly painful events for the other person without really making it right. Amends are stating what wrong you did or what I did. I was wrong when. It's to correct a mistake that one has made or a bad situation one has caused. Amends tells the other person that their pain and hurt was acknowledged. When amends are made, there is acknowledgement, realignment, and positive change. Admitting to wrongdoings usually totally changes the playing field. Amends are to clean up our side of the street. It is not an apology. And whether we make direct or indirect amends, we can proceed with living amends by making real changes in our lives. Living amend is a commitment. It means finding a way to correct past wrong. Is it made by actively improving relationships in my life? Living amends means giving of myself in a healthy way, being of service to others and else in and outside the program. And it also is to stay focused on changing behaviors for the better. So options for making amends to myself would be to focus on my emotions. Think of dysfunctional self as ideal self that you didn't live up to, causing you to harm yourself. Then be gentle with your real self who didn't know any better. Because I know I didn't know any better because of the way I was raised. I wasn't taught a lot of things and I had to learn a lot of things on my own. Acknowledge the mistake out loud. So anytime that I do something to somebody, even now, I will try to make amends as soon as I recognize that I have harmed another person. Also, making amends to myself, I can write myself a letter. And there's an example, I don't know, I don't have it on me, but there is an example on writing amends. There's a healthy way and a unhealthy way. Think of each mistake as a learning experience, because I look at it, there are no mistakes. I have learned from it. If I repeat it, then, maybe it is kind of a mistake, but I have to look at it as a learning experience. And hopefully I learned enough by not repeating what I did before. Have a conversation with my inner critic. Notice when you are being self-critical and quiet the negative messages. So if I don't have that as much anymore when I beat myself up. I did a lot of beating myself up years ago, but the program has helped me to love myself and to not be so critical with myself and to forgive myself when something happens. So I think I will pass it on to Catherine. And okay, Catherine, it's up to you.
Thanks, Ellen. Great overview. Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine. I'm an adult child, and I'm also recovering codependent. This is my 7th year of recovery, so I've been around the block a little bit with step 9, but I feel like a beginner. I mean, I just feel like it's always a little higher step every time I do it. What's required is a really good, thorough 4th step. And then the 5th step, it's just amazing how these steps prepare us for the oncoming steps that we have. And so the 5th step is really admitting the correct nature of your wrongs. And for me, that was accepting my codependency and accepting my laundry list traits and understanding how those affected me, but also understanding how they affected other people. And the harm that I did was from being codependent and an adult child. So I had a lot of amends to do because I've lived a life of codependency. So I have tried to do more of a living amends, not so much in the letter writing thing, because I really need to get the feedback from the other person. And so I worked with my sister and my daughter and my mother, and I made an amends to my father. We were at a retreat, and we had the little lanterns that light up and go off into the sky. And so I put his name on one and released all of that. And I remember how freeing that felt. Like I just wasn't carrying around all that stuff anymore. It was like we weren't glued together. We weren't enmeshed anymore. I was able to let go. And he had passed, so I talk at his gravesite. My mother was a different story because our communication was so poor that there is no way we could really have a conversation. The only thing I can do for her is just to be of service. That's my living amends, is to be available and try to have her needs met, and not caretaking and not tolerating bad behavior, but being supportive with her and loving. I don't know, she's never been diagnosed with anything, so I don't know what it would be, but a very cold mother, a very distant, cold mother, and mean at times. And she had a lot to deal with. And the more I knew about her by asking questions about her life and how she felt about things, the more I understood her. So one of the qualities for making an amends, I think, is the ability to let go and forgive, understand and accept, and just be, brutally honest with yourself during this process. Last step 8, we made a list, and take your time would be my advice. Just take your time in how you want to do the amends, what feels good in your gut. Because writing my daughter a letter did not feel good in my gut at all. It's not us. We would have a conversation. And she was gardening one day, and this was about 3 months after I realized what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say it. So I asked my higher power that when the time was right and when the words came, that it would just happen. And she was gardening one day, and it happened. The words came and something lifted. And she was very accepting. Neither one of us were defensive. And that's the other thing. It's not, it's not saying I'm sorry and then maybe not changing, because just to make a change in my behavior, I know what it takes. It's a lot of commitment to do that. And to think differently and understand differently takes a lot longer than just going to another step, when you're completing the 12 steps. I think it's taken all of this 6 years to really understand this process. And I still feel like I'm just at the beginning of it. I've spent 60 years being codependent and acting out on the laundry list. I'm probably going to have some of these when I take my last breath. But I want the people that I care about and that I love to understand that I do love them and that I'm there, and being present and maybe asking more questions than speaking so much, and just exploring your life and your relationships with the people, because I really truly believe that the quality of my life is the quality of my relationships. So this is such an important step, nothing to be rushed, nothing to be anxious about. Do it when it feels right and how it feels right. Thanks for letting me share.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm also an adult child and a recovering codependent. And my experience with step 9, I, like so many of us, have done, hold on one second, my computer just did something all on its own, but I guess you all can't see that. I've done several step 9s in my recovery journey. Many of them improved as each time I accepted the challenge from my higher power to tackle a particular amends or a new unrelated amends. And I look at my earlier attempts as I do my recovery experience. I do the best I can with the tools I have at the moment. It's a healthy initiative to make an effort towards change. And at the end game of the amends, in my opinion, is to have a change occur in our patterns of behaviors. Once coming face to face with my demons in step 4 and knowing the origins of the patterns, I thought I'd be able to truly forgive and forget by the time I did my first amends. I journaled about everybody. I journaled to everybody. I journaled out entire scenarios, sometimes admonishing myself and the other party, sometimes accepting the hindsight of grace and forgiveness towards the other person. But I just journaled, thinking that would lift the weight that was on me. And as we've stated here very plainly, that's wrong. Although it may be a good start and a necessary start, it needs further practice. And because making an amends, as we're learning, is about taking responsibility for our resentments or harms and knowing how we could handle a similar situation present day. Because the past is only alive in our perceptions, eventually the perspective that an amends is for me becomes the goal of my mission. I've done the work and I have an understanding of the harms I've done. And if just an honest admission would lift the weight off my shoulders, I'll take 2, please. There are so many benefits to making an amends and practicing the habit of regularly making timely amends. And I'll get into that more next week when I help facilitate step 10. The absence of expectation lightens the load as well. It takes a lot of courage to get to the point of wanting to make an amends. So yes, another affirmation and acknowledgement to celebrate, just getting to the point where you think you can, crack that nut. As I'll go over in step 10 again, it's life-changing for me to make these timely amends, as Catherine was alluding to. The cleansing feeling of a new opportunity to practice new behaviors is never unwelcome to me. It doesn't matter how I've acted out or what I might be making an amends for. If I realize that an amends is needed and I know that I can change my behavior, I'm just so grateful. But I'd like to regress a minute and discuss what a wrong amends tastes like. I look back and smile when I read the example of unhealthy amends that was included in the homework. If nothing else, that's how my initial conversations in my head went. I forgive you for yada, 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 and now I'm saved, and now I can go on about my merry old way. The amends that I sent to folks via text or email, or to letters that I wrote to people who are no longer alive, ranged from sincere and raw with way too much detail to amends with the alternative motive to show off my newfound personal growth. It was to convince somebody else that I was different and not the vulnerable person who had been suffering so long with this resentment. Fortunately, I found myself on the brink of a Coda retreat in Hilton Head when a major qualifier in my family of origin died a few days before. I took great notice of the timing of the reconciliation of his death to the much anticipated retreat. I knew that there'd be a wonderful letter reading and letting go observance fire pit that first night, and this was my opportunity to make a more accomplished amends. Again, wrong. My letter to my stepbrother was full of forgiveness for him for all the transgressions I had felt as a result of being his victim. Much to my shock and awe, I showed a well-seasoned recovery advisor my letter right before the event. And she basically tore it in half and suggested that I hurry up and rewrite the amends from the perspective of my transgressions in the relationship. After I picked myself up, I soon realized that the amends was for the resentments I had carried around for almost 40 years. As I learned to completely block him from my responsibility, my life, my memories. As a result, I judged him as harshly as I had ever been judged in my youth. The past happened, but so did a lot of other things. And one of the most cherished of those things is recovery. So I returned to my opinion that if I could make my future better by not trying to control it, but rather taking advantage of a present opportunity to reconcile the past, why would I not oblige? Making an amends without expectation to the outcome is my welcome consequence of having faith and trust and desire for healthy and loving relationships. Thank you for letting me share. And now I think we go to, back to Ellen for our discussion period. Ellen, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot I muted. Okay, well, please now go into our sharing portion. Raise your digital hand. And if calling in, please raise your hand by notifying the chat room. If you have a question you cannot put in the chat box, you can email anatomy12steps2022@gmail.com, which will be monitored by our trusted servant, Eva. It is now time to open up our discussion on step 9. Please limit your share to 3 minutes. A timer, do we have a timer? No. Okay. We're open to sharing now. Or questions, if you have any questions.
Pat, or one of the trio, the Orlando group.
Yes, one of the trio. That's me. Hi, everybody. I'm Madeline. I'll share with you a little bit some experiences I had and have had with step 9. I remember one person said it so succinctly when we were talking one time about step 9, and she wanted to make amends by simply saying she was wrong in that she had carried a resentment toward this person for 40 years, and then basically why. And I think, like someone else said, for me, the amends in step 9 is directly related to what I put on my chart in step 4. It's the people that I had harmed, or the people I was mad at because I was selfish, because I wanted them to behave differently, to treat me differently, to be a different person. And that's really very selfish of me. And also I was very inconsiderate because I didn't consider where they were coming from and what they knew or did not know about life. I thought they should be different. And in many cases, I was frightened, and that fear just really screws my logical mind up. And I'm deluded because I didn't see my part in the situation. Some of the people I made amends to would be like my mother. And I remember when I made amends to her, we were sitting at her little table in her little kitchen, and I made amends to her, and she just kind of looked at me and didn't understand the amends at all. And that's okay. The amends are for me, it's not for her. Another person I made amends to was my husband at the time. And when I made amends to him, he looked at me and he said, huh? He also didn't understand what the amends were, but that's okay. The amends are for me, not for him. The one that I want to share, though, is the amends I made with my dad. He had died by the time I got into recovery. And when I did my 4-step chart with my sponsor, and I was talking about my dad, I had no anger toward him. I had more pity toward him than anger. So when I wrote my amends letter, and I was going to have to go to the grave to read it there, you know, my sponsor said, Madeline, that's not an amends letter. We got to write it again. So I did it wrong the first time. So I had to rewrite the amends letter to my dad. And once I got approval from my sponsor for that letter, I went to the cemetery to his grave and stood over his grave, very self-consciously, by the way, to read the letter to him. Now, are y'all aware of how many people drive through graveyards? I could not believe that because I was so embarrassed standing there reading a letter over this grave, but I started doing it anyway because my sponsor told me I had to do it. And so I started reading that letter to him. He was the alcoholic in my family. He was the one that did not come to my rescue, but I didn't understand that the first time around. By the time I finished reading that letter to him at his gravesite, I was crying. And by the way, there were still cars going through the cemetery, but I didn't care at all by that time. I was boo-hooing, I was crying, all of that feeling about him, and what didn't happen in my childhood came out in that letter. And the letter was, again, because I was selfish. I wanted him to be a different kind of dad, and he wasn't. He was trained to earn living for the family. He was not trained in how to be a dad. He knew nothing about being a dad. And by that time, too, he had come back from World War II. And I think pretty much a broken man. He saw a lot of bad stuff in the South Pacific. So he was crushed after the war. And I didn't understand that at all. I mean, he could not have helped me like I needed help. And I had to understand that. And doing that amends to him really helped. It freed me of my feelings. The other example I thought I would share is of a lady I sponsored, a lady who has now died years ago, but she was abused by a male in her family, cousin or uncle or stepbrother or somebody, I don't even remember. But when she wrote the letter of amends to him, she cussed him out, she blessed him out, she blamed him for her problems. I mean, she did the whole thing. And I said, that's not an amends letter. The amends letter is only our side of the street, not their side of the street. And she just could not understand that and fired me as her sponsor. Only to come back to me 3 years later, and she was saying, now I understand what that 9th step is all about. Now I'm ready to do a real 9th step on my part of all the problems that I had in my life. So I think this step, this 9th step, is a huge one. To me, it's a pivotal step. It was in my recovery. It wasn't an easy step at all. It was an action step because I had to do some things in this one. I had to literally make amends to people. Thanks for letting me share.
Catherine?
Hi, everybody. Catherine again. I just put my mother in hospice today, and this was a reading on her birthday, and it's called Amends. So I just wanted to share it with you. Make it a rule of life never to regret and never look back. Regret is an appalling mask or waste of time, energy. You can't build on it. It is good only for wallowing in. It says looking back and regretting are very different from taking stock. Making amends and moving on. When we look back and regret, we are indulging in the self-centered activity of beating ourselves over the mistakes in our past. All of us have made mistakes. Where we have operated out of the craziness of this addictive disease process, we have done much harm to ourselves and others. We have neglected ourselves. We have neglected those we love. That is the nature of an addiction. Now we can admit our wrongs, make amends to those we have wronged, including amends to ourselves when we have not been caring for ourselves, and move on. We cannot build on shame, guilt, or regret. We indeed can only wallow in them. Owning and making amends for my mistakes affords me the opportunity to build on my past and integrate it. I can start doing this anytime, maybe even today. February 20th, my mother's birthday. Thank you for letting me share.
Okay, Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy, Coda. This is my first time working the steps. So I had a question. I have someone who I resent, but I don't know, like, I don't feel like I've personally harmed them because I've never met them, but they assaulted my sister, which then like consequently has very much impacted my life. So I have my sister on here for resentments as well, but I'm just wondering, like, this person isn't on my step 4 list. So I just was hoping to get some feedback on kind of if that goes on this due to the amount of resentment I have. Thank you.
Amy, I could answer in a way. The harm that you've done is to yourself. Maybe making amends to yourself because you were hurt so deeply that your sister was assaulted.
Okay.
And so maybe doing something like that, maybe a letter expressing how you feel and what you would have liked to have lived through instead of that.
Okay. Thank you.
But go ahead, Ellen and Abby. Anything to add?
I have a sister that was assaulted when she was 8 by a person that was a good friend of the family. Actually, I dated him for a couple of weeks and he helped me out with a lot of things. And I didn't realize he did that until about 4 years ago. I don't remember how long, until my sister had really big resentments against me and I couldn't figure out what it was. And finally we talked about it and she explained to me what happened. She was angry at me because she thought he was my boyfriend and that was her boyfriend as far as she was concerned. He was 17, she was 8. And so I kind of had to work through that because that was my little sister. And I also had to make amends to my sister because I didn't realize that I had hurt her, but it's forgiving myself because first of all, I didn't know all those years. And then forgiving that person, but I never have to talk to him or let him into my life or anything, because it's something that happened and she was in therapy and did all the stuff she needed to do to work through it. And there's nothing I can do. So I have to let go of it. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough place to be. I understand that. So thank you.
Hi, I can weigh in a little bit as well, kind of from a different angle. My first thought when you said that this person was not on your 4th step list, I thought, well, why not do a 4th step about him? Anytime you've got a resentment that's bothering you, you can work through the 4th step and then that tells you where you are. That shows you your side of the street. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Nancy? This is Nancy. I'm from Indiana. What I was thinking about is, you don't have a name to put to this person, like his name is John or Bill or whatever, but you do have things that have gone through your mind that you want to say. So writing a letter and then not sending it, but just writing it and maybe burning it or something like that would be my suggestion. The other thing I was thinking about is it's kind of like, in a way, it's like my thing of making amends to institutions, and, you can't go and tell an institution that you're sorry, that you were wrong. But what you can do is stop the resentment, not like somebody else just said, do a thorough fourth step on it. And then, write the letter and then let it go. Because that's the whole point, is you're trying to let go. That's all.
And I'm gonna chime in too, since we've got the floor. To me, the biggest thing for me to see, if I've got an institution or a person I don't know or a situation like that, I'm the same way. I have got to sit down and do that 4-step chart that we did and really start looking at who have I harmed by carrying this resentment. And I can explore that more clearly when I do that 4-step chart and then talk to someone else about it. The hardest thing sometimes is picking up that 1,000-pound phone, and it's a very brave thing to do, to reach out for help, but it's probably the best thing I have ever done in my recovery, because talking with other people helps me get clarity. My crazy thinking doesn't help me get past my resentments, gets past my fears, all the crap that goes on in my head, unless I talk with someone else about it. Because like if something comes up, I call Nancy, or if I call Madeline, or I call Abby, or call, any of these people that you could see the lights on in their heads. And they're comfortable in their own skin, and they won't make me feel stupid for my crazy thoughts, because my thoughts really aren't crazy. They're just like everybody else's thoughts. So I think the very first thing I would do is reach out to somebody, do a good resentment, go through that resentment chart. And I do that a lot with the people that call me. I mean, we can do it right there on the phone. It's not that hard to do, but looking at how this resentment is selfish or self-centered, or who is it inconsiderate to? And then is this resentment based on flawed thinking? And sometimes it takes me a little while to find the flawed thinking. Once I find that flawed thinking, then it's so much easier to get rid of the resentment. It's also good for me to see why I've been holding on to it. What's the payoff for holding on to it? So I think I'm going to pass and let somebody else share.
Thank you.
Hey, Amy.
Hi, it's still me. I just wanted to say thank you for that feedback. Hearing all that, my gut reaction is I'm not ready for that amends just yet. It's some horrible information that only recently came to light like a year ago, and it's a lot right now still. That being said, I feel like I have really worked through the resentment I have towards my sister, and had I known she had years worth of, sexual abuse and it was all PTSD responses, I think I would have let go of some of the blame and resentment a long time ago. So I feel like I'm in a good place to do that. So I'm gonna do her amends and include myself as well, and then kind of backtrack to step 4 for this other individual, maybe after I feel a little more grounded with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
Hi, this is Barbara, a recovering adult child and a recovering codependent. Um, for step 9, I did some work on step 9. I remember when because I talked last week about my mother, having my mother on the list. And I remember when I went to her, I had some resentments against my mother, and I was very angry with my mother for many years because I thought that my mother should have taken us out of the situation that we were in, because she was physically abused constantly, and it scared me a lot, and I felt sad a lot seeing her, with black eyes and things beat up like that. And I didn't, I wasn't, didn't probably, I didn't treat her with the respect that I wanted to at the time. And when I went to share with my mother, make amends, and I did tell her how I felt and what I thought, and her response to me was, what in the hell do you think I was going to do, or where was I going to take 8 children with a 3rd grade education and not knowing, how to do too much of anything? And it really kind of threw me back, but I understood. And when she said that, because I thought, if she had left and taken us somewhere else, all kinds of things could have happened that made things even worse. But just like I heard someone else say, I wanted her to be a different kind of mother. And she just could not be that different kind of mother, because she had shared with me she ran away from home when she was 13 years old because of the way her mother, how mean and abusive her mother was to her. And then she ended up marrying at a very young age to a very abusive man, who was my father. And I was very angry with my father as well. And by the way, the next day after I talked with my mother and told her how much I loved her and how much I appreciated all the sacrifices, you feel myself getting emotional. All the sacrifices that she made to keep us all together. She died the next day. But I didn't get a chance to tell my father or to make amends to him, because I had a lot of, I think almost a lot, it had gotten to the point almost of hatred because of how he treated my mother, as well as treated us sometimes, and the things he would call us. And there were times when that was so scary that, he would get a gun and run us out of the house with a gun, threaten to shoot us. And I was just so angry with him about those kinds of things. And I remember, the things when I got to the job, I thought, I used to take money out of his pocket when he was drunk and he was asleep. I'd steal it. And so that was my part. That was not right for me to do that, even though he was, he was inebriated or drunk. It still was not my right. I didn't have a right to go into his pockets and take the money. So I ended up going, making that amends after he had passed away. And of course, I had myself on the list. And I remember in step 4, when I did a step 4, there was just the pattern that was so evident to me was how it was very evident how I harmed myself, and primarily through relationships with men. And it was very painful as well as shameful to look at, because I realized so many times that I had gotten into relationships with men who were unhealthy, and I harmed myself because I didn't respect myself a lot in those relationships, because I would, of course, try to please them so much. and not even think about myself and not stand up for myself. So I made amends by, you know, deciding to just for what not even being in relationships until I got healthier. And I remember one relationship I got into and for just a little while, and it was beginning to get kind of intimate. And this man, you know, he wanted to kiss me, and I did allow him to kiss me, but that was, and he wanted to go further than that, but I was able to say no, you know, that's not what I want. Whereas I can remember prior to, you know, not being able to necessarily making the choice to say that. Like I didn't think I had a choice. So I'm taking much better care of myself. That's how I'm making amends. I'm, you know, exercising and treating myself with respect and with dignity, and you know, listening, being a loving parent to myself, and that has made all the difference in the world to me. And just and I continue to have to make amends to myself, but I feel a lot healthier today about who I am, and I have been able to, you know, let go of the resentments and the anger and all the, you know, negative feelings I had towards my parents, and they've been replaced more with compassion and understanding and empathy. And I'm just real grateful for just learning all the learning that I have been able to do as a result of working these steps and using the tools and being in this program. And I totally agree with the person who said picking up the phone helps a lot, because it really does help me to get clarity with my thinking a lot of times, especially when I want to do something. Or, you know, if someone has done something to me, and helping me to just look at my part and try to, you know, try to really think it through, because sometimes I would have a tendency to act on my emotions too quickly, and that's not always the best thing for me to do. So like that, I'm very, very grateful for all that I'm learning, and thank you all for this wonderful workshop. And with that, I'll pass.
Okay, thank you. Purnell?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Great shares on this. So what's coming up for me is I'm thinking of how long I held a resentment against a former coworker of mine. And I can now look back on it, and I did do an amends on it to her. And I can now see the harm that it did to me. It extremely harmed me. I carried that around for so long. And in kind of response to Amy's question, there's a quote that I really like. There's two of them, but this one to me says it more succinctly, and it gets to the point. It's Wayne Dyer. It's not the snake bite that kills you. What has happened cannot be undone. It's the venom that is pulsing through your body that takes your life. So I have to now, and looking back at that, how long I carried that around, what did it cost me? It cost me a lot, a lot. I can look back and think, wow, I could have been so happy if I hadn't have been angry at this person for so long. And she was just being the little bee she was. That's who she was. It wasn't, I took it personally, you know, and I know it's not a comparison, but I'm just saying that I do have to really question myself. What does it cost me? I mean, I get that it was really, really hard. I wanted to hold on to it because I got to be right. I was right. She treated me horribly. I mean, you know, all that crazy stuff for so long. And so my actions speak louder than words, right? I mean, I have to live differently, and I had to. The funny thing was about the story that this person, I got out of the job and got another job at the central office. 2 years later, I said, my higher power has a sense of humor. She got a job and was like 2 doors down the hall from me. It's like my higher power had a sense of humor, and I had changed at that point, and it was all okay. I welcomed her, and I made a living amends at that point. So anyway, and one other thing I want to say, I found this last year when I was doing research on this step, and I kind of liked it. It's simple. They called it a Panda Apology or a Panda Amends. So it just is an acronym for promise it will never happen again. A, admit my wrong or fault. N, no excuses. D, describe how I will handle it next time if it comes up. And A, act on my promise. So that's kind of a simple way it helped me last year. Thank you, guys. Glad y'all are here.
Thank you. Hortensia?
Hi. I think something very important for me in the 9th step is first sharing with my sponsor my 8th step, like have a lot of clarity of which are the people that I harm and what are the specifics, and which is the order for my amends. And then, okay, I'm gonna target this one. And then once I'm working on it, work on my 9th step of whoever it's like, it's myself or my mom or my brother, and then check in with her before I go and make the amends, because usually that amend is like very long. And then usually the first time it's me trying to convince the other person that I'm a good person. And it's still me trying to, I'm still with all of my codependent behaviors in my amend process, like wanting the other person to like me and to be convinced about my amend process. So from my first draft, there's probably 2 or 3 more. And it usually at the end, it's like 1/10 of the words at the end. So it can be more simple, and that takes out all the guilt. Less words, less guilt. And it's more to the point. And so I think it's very important to do it together with your sponsor. And another thing I wanted to tell, who was asking about some advice on the perpetrator and how to make amends to oneself. Oh, Amy. I think if you could, maybe, I think, like from my perspective, maybe this will help you be clear on how this resentment, what it has cost to you specifically. So like when I did my 8th step, like what it has cost me on my 4th step, actually, like, because of all this resentment, I don't even do my tax returns and I'm behind. Or because of this resentment, I'm unhappy in my job. I have financial problems, or I don't even rest. I don't take vacation. I like all the things that are costing me in my life. And that will give me some clarity of where I need to make amends to myself when I have more detail of what it has cost in my life, this resentment. So maybe that will give you a little bit of clarity when you see what it has cost you. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Madeline, Nancy, and Pat, the trio.
Sorry about that one. This is Madeline again. I'd like to double dip because a lot of the examples and questions we've had tonight is about resentments we've have toward other people, probably because of the abuse they've done toward us. There's another kind from our 4-step chart, and that is harm we have done to others. And I thought I'd give you 2 examples. One was a person who had gone to a convention and someone stole her pen at the convention, and it made her furious. So on her way driving home, she stopped at Walmart and stole a pen of the same type. And she was telling me about the harm she'd done to Walmart when she was doing her 5th step. And I said, oh boy, we get to do an amends for that. And she said, why should I do amends to Walmart? They have all kinds of money. I said, it's not for them, it's for you. And she says, I don't know how to do that. So what we decided together is that she would send Walmart $3.57, the pen plus tax, and she would mail it back to them. And she had a hard time because she says, I don't want them to know that I have stole their pen. So we decided to let her mail cash. I know that's not what you're supposed to do, but she mailed cash, and she stuck down the coins with Scotch tape so they wouldn't roll around in an envelope. And she went to a different town and mailed $3.57 or whatever it was back to a Walmart, a different Walmart, not the one where she stole this pen. And she put an amends note in there. I was wrong because I stole this pen from you. And I'm making my amends by sending you $3.57. And she did. And it made her feel better. The other one was another person who had had a lot of jobs as a teenager out of high school and in young adult years, and had stolen from a company. Stolen serendipitously, stolen from the company by taking food that wasn't given, stolen from the company by taking supplies that were not given to him. And so he had accumulated, and he figured up probably about $250 worth of supplies that he had stolen from that company. And he wanted to make amends to the company. So he literally got $257 and is it a cashier's check or something that doesn't have a name on it? I don't know how this was done, but mailed it back to the company from a different town also to make amends for what he had done. So these are different kinds of amends, but I thought they needed to be mentioned. And again, I am Madeline. I'm an adult child and codependent. Thanks for all your shares tonight. And thanks for hearing me twice.
Okay, thank you, Madeline. Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane. I was trying to unmute and my picture was jumping around there. So anyway, I'm Jane and I'm a recovering codependent. And this was an example many years ago that was given to me, that a very visual, concrete example of the harm I do to myself when I'm holding a resentment. So I thought I would share it. It was actually a counselor that gave this example, that as long as I am holding that resentment, I am in bondage. I am chained to that. I'm in bondage to that person. So the person that harmed me, I was sexually molested. The person that harmed me, was not hurting from me holding that resentment. I was harming myself, and by letting go of it, I freed myself from that person. Now, as far as the 4-step chart, all those years that I held it, it really, it stole years from my life and my serenity, my peace, my, I kept myself in a victim mode for a very long time, holding on to that. Now, I mean, there was a lot that I didn't understand. I was very young, and you know, I struggled to, you know, I was just really confused for that period of time. So I'm really, really thankful for the counseling I received, but it still was when I got in 12-step recovery that I could see more clearly. That 4-step chart really helped me see more clearly the harm that I had done to myself. Thank you for letting me share.
Allison? Thank you, Jane.
Hi, I'm Allison, Coda, South Carolina, and I'm in a very dark parking lot. So all you've got is my flower at the moment. But this is an incredible step. And I'm not sure that I can add a whole lot to what everybody else has said. But my first 9th step with my first sponsor, she explained to me that making amends means amending our behavior. And I've held on to that ever since. So for me, all of my amends are living amends, first and foremost. It is important for me to be able to show up differently. Now, when the circumstances have presented themselves so that I can make a direct amends with somebody, I'm ready, willing, and able to do that now. Some people, like my mom, I did not make direct amends to because, as Jen said before, she wouldn't have understood it. But I did show up differently, and I treated her differently. With my dad, the opportunity presented itself, and he shared that he never understood why the nurses he worked with were so intimidated by him. And I saw my chance, and I said, Dad, you know, I was really intimidated by you growing up too. And I have kept you at arm's length for many years, and I don't want to do that anymore. And honestly, I don't remember how he responded. But the thing that step 9 gives me is, yeah, we talked about cleaning up my side of the street, but what that means is that I know I am not that person anymore that caused harm. That's not me anymore. And I have confidence that I can behave differently. The last thing I want to share is that another tool that I've used a lot, and those of you who know me and have heard me talk have heard this, but I really like in CODA the recovery patterns of codependence, because I'm a codependent, right? I do this stuff. I don't know what the right way is. I don't know what the recovery thing is. For many years, I was on my own. We didn't have a lot of sponsorship back in the day. Now, yes, I've got a sponsor I can call, but I also have these patterns I can look at. And when I go through and I can see what patterns are cropping up for me again, I can also look at the other side and see, okay, what's an alternative? What else could I do that would be healthier? And that gives me something else to do, and another way to behave, and a way to show up differently with people. So yeah, I need to be willing to show up differently with people in my space. The step says I may direct amends wherever possible. So I'm going to let God take care of the timing. But when somebody's in my space, I need to be ready, willing, and able to make those direct amends. And I'm always in my space, right? So I'm the first person on my list. But some people are always in my space too. My husband, my parents, my friends. Some people are not in my space, and I have no idea where they are and how to contact them. But I know what I did wrong. I'm very clear about that. I know how I need to show up differently. I am willing to make amends if that person ever shows up in my space. And I know I'm not that person anymore that caused the harm that I caused at the time. So that's my experience. Thank you all for letting me share.
Thank you, Allison. Catherine?
Hi, Catherine AC and Codependency. Vernell, do you have that patterns in recovery handy? Do you have that document that you could put in the chat room?
I muted you by mistake.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's
I
okay.
can
We should all
put, I
get that once or
can, I
twice.
do have it and I will put it in. Thank you. I will.
Okay, I love that because basically when I first went to Code, I've only been ACA maybe less than 2 years, but 5 years in CODA. That was the light that flipped on for me, was that document, because it's a little cross-talk here, but like Allison said, you know, I didn't know how normal was because I'd been acting in all of my codependent traits all my life. So I didn't know what I should be doing in so many areas, in compliance and control and denial and, you know, self-esteem. I mean, it's a lot to cover. Those couple of pages, it's amazing. I mean, definitely inspiring. But what I wanted to say that I don't know if it's been mentioned yet about amends is my amends to my higher power, or God, as you understand God. I went through a lot of religious abuse growing up, and then I had some real trauma. And by the time I was 15, I flipped God off. Screw you. You've never been here for me. I'm done. Because it was really shoved down my throat for a lot of time that if you trusted in God that everything would be okay. Well, guess what? It wasn't. It wasn't okay. So it took me a lot of years, and really until I always felt like a spiritual connection of some sort with others, with people, animals, the planet, nature. But I never really, I was really pissed at God. And so probably within the last year or so, I really connected very spiritually with my higher power. And that feeling has never left me since. And I think what it was I had to understand forgiveness, and the world was never going to be the way I wanted it. And it wasn't God's fault. Everything that happens is not God's fault. And so with that understanding, I was able to let go. It took a lot to let go of that resentment. Thanks for letting me share.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Ellen?
Hi. Can I actually put my video now? So I came a little bit later, but I'm going to share on step 9. I think the hardest thing was higher power, but also like just doing amends to myself, because I've been so hard on myself for so long. And I agree with other fellow travelers. It's been really hard to see what it's like to see the right patterns, or like how it's supposed to be, like what's the normal. Because I've been just so, what is it? My family loved by criticizing each other. That's the way they're showed love. And that's what I thought love is, and beating myself up and criticizing. So I think now that I'm learning the normal pattern, you know, to just come to the mirror and just say, like, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. You made a mistake. And just, it was so hard to start with myself. That amends, it just is, because just coming from a dysfunctional family. So I just think that is just, and then, you know, other people, I think just speaking up and telling them, I guess, like, not holding a resentments over and over, because I think that's my problem, that I you know, tell them and then I want to kind of hold resentment again. So just to be honest with them and just tell how I feel and not to be a people pleaser, it's really difficult. So that's kind of what I am right now. Just like, I made amends to my husband, but also to like do it every day and just keep up the good work and just progress, not perfection. Because I'm such a perfectionist, I just want to, like, oh, you know, I'm never gonna be resentful towards, and the next day I'd become have to do step 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, 9 all over again with him. So I guess just that's what it is, just to forgive myself and to start every day over, and to know that this is a program that I have to work every day. So it doesn't stop here. So yeah, every day is it's like a new challenge, and I have to make amends every day to my husband. I feel like I do step 9 every day with him. So yeah, thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Ellen. Kendall?
Hey, glad to be on the meeting and getting to see everybody. It was really hard for me to do step 9, that first letter. The very first letter that I wrote was to a very dear friend of mine that I stopped communicating with. I'm sure it's stemmed from a lot of guilt on my part. But then I just didn't reach out to her. So finally I did write the letter, and I did reach out, and I found out that she had passed. So that really hurt. And let me know that life's fragile. It's not forever. But I do a living amends by being a better friend, by staying in touch, being a better communicator, returning calls in a timely fashion. So those are things that I could do. The first letter of amends that I read was to my aunt, who's a second mom to me. She always was, but it was a series of emails back and forth with my sponsor, because I wanted to blame her and make an amends, and that didn't work out too well. But yeah, I did do this, but it's only because you did such and such. But that was not, I was reminded by my sponsor repeatedly with the 5 or 6 revisions of my letter that it's only about what I have done, not about what the other person has done. And this is an onto, it's hard to fault her for anything, but I did resent that when my brother passed, and the drama that emerged when my mother passed, and they both passed within months of one another, it just was really overwhelming. And she wanted me to be in touch with family members that were very, very toxic. And I, through the gift of detachment, told her that I wouldn't do it, that I couldn't do it. And that hurt. But finally, after reconnecting with her, I did write the letter, and I did read the letter. And part of it is, I pulled it up. Dear Aunt, I'm writing you this letter of amends for harms I have done to you over the years. My perception of harms I have done. I'm in an Al-Anon program, and part of the recovery process is to make amends and to be accountable for my actions moving forward. I recognize I've been impatient, judgmental, inconsiderate, self-centered, and selfish. I've tried to persuade you to see my point of view. I've become overly emotional at times. I've been condescending and judgmental of my siblings, and in so doing, put you in the middle. I would not be there for my siblings as you requested when my brother died. I was not forgiving you when you were in touch with them. And I apologize for detaching and ghosting you for 2 months during the holidays. You've been my devoted aunt, a second mother, a compassionate and steadfast friend. You've been there since I was born, every milestone, every graduation, every praise, every token of affection, which have been received with love and greatly appreciated. You live your life demonstrating love. And that being said, I'm sincerely sorry and apologize for having offended, disappointed, and harmed you, our relationship and our friendship. And the love, Kindle. And I read it to her, and then she shared that she had done something when she was young and wanted to share it with me, which caught me off guard. But it was just that she had an aunt that had mistreated her, and they were worked extremely hard. It was her job to do a lot of ironing all these fine linens and things when she went to visit her. So she and my other aunt, who I can't picture them doing this, but they scorched a mark in every one of the linens and things that they were asked to fold. So anyway, it was something she needed to get off her chest when I did my letter. And to me, it was just even more endearing and even more of a moment of connection with my sweet, wonderful aunt. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Kendall. Jan?
Hello, my name is Jan. I'm recovering codependent from Boston, and my share is very short. And I was listening to everybody speak and making pages of notes here, as you can all see. And also it just popped into my head, and it gave me such a feeling of peace that I thought I'd share it. And it's just an old saying that we all know. It's called two wrongs doesn't make a right. So that's my share for tonight. And when I thought about that, it was just like, phew. So now it's a lot easier to work on those amends letter. And thank you all for your great shares, and have a good night.
Okay, thank you. I had thought of something that I did an amends like years ago. I wasn't ready. It was like when I was first in AA, and I really hadn't done the steps, like steps should have been done. And I was in Connecticut, and I saw a friend of mine directing traffic, and I know I hurt him pretty bad when I was in high school. And I pulled the car over, jumped out of the car, ran over to him and said, "I'm sorry, blah, 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 blah." And he said to me, he just kind of smiled and said, he always had a special place in my heart. But when I shared that with fellow AA people, step people, I mean, recovery people, they're like, no, 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 no. That is not how you make an amends. So I was like, I just thought I'd share that because it was kind of funny. But, oh, well. Okay, so I guess we're near ending the meeting. It is now time to close the meeting. Does anyone have a burning desire to share on this topic? Yeah, okay. A few members will stay after the meeting for any further questions from new members on this step study. Homework for the next week will be promptly set out. If there are any questions regarding homework, our trusted servant Alva at anatomy12steps@2022gmail.com can be reached, the same email that you registered for this program. So I'm going to hand it over to Emily to share about step 10.
Sorry, I was muted. Great shares tonight. Really, really incredible. Very powerful. I'm learning a lot. I'm one of your trusted leaders and also kind of a techie person. I've been doing all the recordings. So I've only been in recovery since like last February. So I've only been in this recovery program for a year. I'm codependent, adult child of an alcoholic. I've been through the steps with a sponsor who is part of the task force, and I love her dearly. Regarding the homework, right, next week is step 10, and I'm going to read step 10 really quick. So we continue to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Okay, and what you're going to be getting in your homework is actually something that my beloved sponsor shared with me when I went through these steps with her. Okay, so you have a 10-step homework. I've written on this one that you'll get a kind of a sheet to fill out. What do we call this? We call this I don't know what we call this. I think we call this not an inventory because we have something else. Okay, so we have this little questionnaire. Okay, so this is albeit my notes have been scribbled on. This is our 10-step questionnaire. Okay, you're also going to get, if you can see this, I don't know, it's going to be backwards, a daily personal inventory log. Okay, and when you're going through step 10 this week, here's some things that we'd like you to consider. Okay, Abby and I are going to be presenting next week. So in this homework, so we're at step 9. It's almost kind of revisiting, just briefly, I just want to mention, it's almost kind of revisiting step 4 and 5, right? In 4, we took a searching and fearless moral inventory, and we admitted to, so that's 4. And then 5 is we admitted to ourselves, God, and another person, the exact nature of our wrongs, okay? So without giving away too much or influencing any responses, I want to let you guys like dive in and kind of come up with your own perspective of this. But I do want to say this is meant for every day. This inventory log is kind of meant for an everyday type of use for step 10, right? Whereas a couple of fellow travelers mentioned earlier doing a quick 4-step, right? Like you have something that happens at work, or something that's really upset you, and you can do a 4th step about it. And then after you've completed your 4th step about this particular problem, you call a fellow traveler. If you have a sponsor, you call and talk to them as many times as you need to, right? I've called several people in one day to just keep calling, right? And you keep saying, here's what I did wrong. Don't have closure with this yet. So you keep working your step 4 and you keep calling people until you've got closure with it. So this is kind of revisiting a little bit, but so that's like step 4 is like a more specific problem. This is for everyday kind of use, okay? So there's Monday through Sunday, okay? And I am going to kind of say that you might consider this like driving with your hazard lights on, okay? You're kind of driving with like a student driver sign in your back window. This is where we've already decided, we've already kind of identified our steps, or we've already identified our 1 or 2 biggest weaknesses. For me, mine is fear and control. And you also have kind of identified what you'd like to do in place of those codependent dysfunctional behaviors, right? And so this is just filling out this and using this as a daily guide, as a way of the journal. It's not meant to be overwhelming. Like I said, you pick your 1 or 2 weaknesses, and it's meant to retrain, right? We're putting back on our blinker lights. We're in the far right lane, and we're practicing. This is a daily practice, right? And we identify our weaknesses when we have them, when they come up, so we can begin to see them. And we also say, okay, well, how do I, in place of that, how can I use my positive responses, right? And so I just wanted to share that. And then I also have one other thing that I want to share. I have a quote that I found recently. This is by a gentleman who, some people are familiar with this or not, V-Way Wisdom. It's actually like he's a Buddhist monk. And I found this quote: people don't trigger you, they trigger your trigger. Okay, so people don't trigger you, they trigger your trigger. You are not your trigger. You are moved by your triggered reaction. Your trigger usually points to what you need to heal. You are responsible for healing. You are responsible for your trigger and for your healing. So you're responsible for how you react. You're responsible for the trigger that triggers you, and you're also responsible for healing that trigger. And I hope this will contribute to your healing this week. You can start it today if you want and go through next Wednesday. Maybe you stick it in your purse or your wallet or something, and kind of look at it throughout the day, hang it on your bathroom mirror, and kind of, jot some notes at the end of the day or something. Use your space here to elaborate on certain experiences. If you want to share something, oh, I finally caught this. This thing usually caught me off guard, but today I was able to catch it and to kind of remediate it before I let my bad triggers get in the way. So we want you to complete the inventory log, and also, again, take a look at the questionnaire. Just briefly, how is working this inventory log into your daily routine? How is this going to help you maybe bring out some awareness to those triggers? And who would you admit your wrongs to? If you're doing a daily personal log, are you gonna maybe, first of all, checking the checklist is gonna admit to yourself, and then are you gonna set aside some time during the day to talk to somebody and to also communicate with your higher power? So that's what we have for next week. We look forward to seeing you then with Abby and I for step 10. And I'm going to toss it back to Catherine to wrap up the meeting for tonight. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna be closing the meeting. Who's doing the prayer?
Catherine?
Thanks, for Catherine.
All right, Catherine again. The spiritual principle in the ACA Big Red Book for this 9th step is strength and courage. And there is a quote by Oprah Winfrey that I think fits perfectly here. She said, "Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. It's accepting the past for what it was and using this moment and this time to help yourself move forward." And then I'll close with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to accept the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me. Thank you, everybody. Great meeting.